Good morning, and welcome to part two of a three-part series on sparking joy, exploring new possibilities. These sessions are designed to help all of us ease out of a challenging year. We know that the pandemic has had an impact on the lives of many, and we have experienced loss and loneliness. Many of us have experienced a decrease in socialization too, and may feel tentative to get out there again. My name is Rebecca Chaplin, and I work with AARP North Carolina. We know that some of you are joining us from all across the country right now. Today's event was planned with some local partners, including our local Jewish Family Services of Western North Carolina and Area Agency on Aging. But don't worry, from wherever you are sitting right now, there are resources that will be relevant to you for today's discussion. So this session is designed to be interactive, and you'll notice you have options for comments. If you're watching on Facebook, the comment section is generally below the video. It may be to the right, depending on the view you're using. And if you're using YouTube, usually the comment section is over to the right. If you want to take a minute right now and let us know where you're watching from, share a comment, that would be great, because this is designed to be interactive, and we really want to be here with you. As we warm up to being with our fellow social human beings, plants and gardening can be a really healing and supportive ally on that path to the return to some type of normalcy. So I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague here, Jessica, to start the conversation today.
Thank you, Rebecca. And everyone, pardon my voice. I'm getting over some laryngitis, but thankfully not COVID. So we're so glad to be here today. And we also wanted to recognize the intersection of two awareness months that happen to fall in May, Older Americans Month and Mental Health Awareness Month. And we hope that by sharing these events, we can break down some of the stigmas that people feel around accessing mental health support from a counselor or a therapist. And at JFS and Healing Solutions Counseling, we do offer that service. So, as Rebecca mentioned, this week we are digging in the dirt or gardening. There are so many ways to supercharge our mental health by going outside and being around growing things. And, gardening really stimulates the senses and contributes to a sense of accomplishment when things grow. So we're excited to welcome John Murphy, the education director at beautiful Bullington Gardens here in Western North Carolina in Hendersonville. And John will join us later for a live Q&A, during which time we'll take your questions. And then later we'll hear from Pam Gillette from our local chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, to talk about resources both local and national. So now let's hear from John a little bit about what he does and how gardening can impact our mental health.
Hi, I'm John Murphy with Bullington Gardens, and we're going to explore a little bit about the joy of gardening. And actually, we're going to start in my home garden. Now, I spend part of my workday at Bullington Gardens working in the landscape there, but I find that at the end of the day, I'm drawn to my own garden, and I enjoy strolling the gardens and seeing what's coming up and what's blooming and smelling the flowers and connecting with this little quiet place that I have. In my vegetable garden, for example, I enjoy seeing if the bean seeds that I planted last week have emerged, and I'm never cease to be amazed by that process of new growth coming out of these seeds. And as I stroll in the garden, I find myself to de-stress a bit, to slow down, to get more peaceful. I find my pace changing a bit from my hectic schedule, and it's really important for my mental health. And I'm not alone. Certainly there are studies that show that garden activity can be very beneficial to one's mental health. So what we're going to do in the next few minutes is to check in with some other folks and see what joy gardening is to them.
You know. I've been growing Daggers for over 50 years, and I feel so lucky that I was able to find a passion back in my 20s, and I have not been able to shake that. I continue to grow them every summer, and I get excited every summer. I dig them out of storage, the roots that they leave from last year, but then when we start planting them and you see the green growth coming up through there, the excitement starts to build. And probably the first week of September, the last week of August, when we get our first blooms, I can't get out of here, I can't get out to the field soon enough, because it's just a perfect combination of colors, shapes, and sizes that no other flower that I know of gives to you.
This is a spring garden. It's a native woodland garden. And what I'm enjoying about this garden is that you come one week and the flowers are up, and it's just, I'm having to move leaves because things are coming up quicker than what I thought than they did last year. And I'm seeing more baby plants as they come through. I've pulled some leaves away from a lot of our trilliums and fern, and one of our prime plants is the yellow lady slipper, and it wasn't that full a week ago, and it's just blooming greatly. And it's both a large slipper and a small slipper. We have several things in this garden of foam flower, violets, trilliums, the cuniatum trillium, and we have columbine, and that has been big. That's small over there. We have the columbine, and also we have the wild geranium. I enjoy gardening. I've been at this garden for more than 13 years as a volunteer, and each year it's different but more fun. And I enjoy this work because we have visitors that come and they say, well, that's hard work. I say, it's only hard if you don't like to garden and you like to play in the dirt. So come and visit us.
I need water. Does ours the only one that have milk?
This is Kevin. I love him. He's so cute. I have him soiled. Back to Bob.
This is Bob. Bob is very good, but he pees in my hand, so I'm gonna put him in the tank.
This is Jimmy. He is sleeping, but he just peed on me. Jessie. That's Jessie.
She's very lovable. She's sleeping head.
Yeah, Bob. Oh, Bob, that tickled.
Yes.
So one of the easiest ways to enjoy gardening is to simply plant a container. And one of my favorite kind of containers is an herb container because they are useful and smell delicious. Depending on the size of your container, how many plants you're going to want to use, because you don't want to overplant. So pick some of the favorite things you use the most. We've got a yummy strawberry mint here. We can have spill over the side. Mint will take over in your garden, so another good reason to put it in a container. Got a basil, which everybody loves. Good thing to do with basil is to, well, all your herbs is just use them, but you want to keep it pinched so it doesn't flower, because your basil will last longer that way. Another tall one in there like parsley, another great herb you can use in everything. And then lastly, another little spiller, this pretty thyme that's variegated. It's a lemon thyme, so it has a yummy smell too. and add a little water and put it somewhere convenient that you can use in your kitchen. So another option is to use ornamental plants for your container. I think a lot of times annuals are a better option for that, partly because perennials will just do better in the ground and come back every year. But you can do something simple. Again, you don't want to overplant. Pick your favorite color scheme. It's fun to be creative putting it together. Here we've got some coleus. Kind of go for that big thriller. And then got a nice Angelonia, good long time bloomer, as with most annuals. And then a Kufia. Again, you just always want to break up that root ball. There. Add a little water, and an easy way to add color to your home.
That was wonderful. The kids were so great. Thank you, John, for that really special video. So welcome to our live Q&A session. And again, we're going to be talking about gardening and mental health and the connections. Again, excuse my voice. I'm going to work on that. So let's dive in with some questions. So first, can you explain a little more about this connection between gardening and mental health and why something like gardening is different from just being outside or going for a hike, which has its own mental health benefits, but what sets gardening apart?
Well, I mean, certainly gardening and it is very well connected to walking in the woods or other kinds of connections with nature. And all those have been shown to provide great benefits to our mental health. So they're very similar. Gardening is a little bit more participatory. So we get to create, we get to plant, we get to nurture plants, which gives another level of satisfaction. But all these sort of nature therapies or ecotherapies, you know, they all have similar benefits. They all help us to improve our mood. They help us to lower our stress levels. And, you know, they just all have positive impacts. Even just having pictures, even studies that show that just having pictures of green plants as opposed to, you know, other pictures, or even having a view out your window that is of plants rather than, say, a road or concrete, can be beneficial.
The concept of like successfully growing something and seeing those like green shoots come out of the ground. There must be a strong mental health connection there too.
Seeing plants come out of the ground, there's a lot of hope. I think there's a lot of hope with gardening. But again, that's also, if you're the one who planted those seeds, or that plant that's sort of unfurling, developing, flowering, there's that other added satisfaction that you're the one that's sort of taking responsibility for that growth. So yeah, gardening also has that aspect of you're nurturing something alive, something that's living, and there's responsibility, but there's also huge satisfaction with that process.
Yeah.
And one thing I might just, I'm sorry to cut you off. One thing I might just mention is there's this whole theory of called biophilia, which is you know, sort of this idea that we humans are innately connected to nature. and we need that connection for our, maybe our survival long ago, but really now for our broader satisfaction. So this whole idea of biophilia is staying connected with nature, and we need to feed that. We need to get out in nature. We need to do those walks. We need to do the gardening to sort of feed that broader satisfaction.
That sort of leads to my next question, I guess, which is that you are a registered horticultural therapist. So what does that mean? What is horticultural therapy?
Horticultural therapy is a practice that it's a process that is led by a trained horticultural therapist, a trained person that works with clients in gardening activities. So it is a process, and it's goal oriented. So there are some goals in mind when we do this. So it's a little bit different than just going out or even just gardening and just feeling good about your garden. There's more goals involved, whether it might be mental health goals, or it might be socialization goals. It could be physical goals, like just fine motor skill development, or it could be even with older populations. When we plant gardens, these plants evoke memories. They start to remember the plants they had when they were a little girl, or our older folks are certainly more connected to plants than I think our younger generation are. They grew up on farms more. They had more activity outside than our current younger generation does. So the smell of flowers, or a particular kind of flower, or just picking beans or picking tomatoes really evokes memories to some of our older clients, and it gets them to start telling stories, which is really important. And even for me, in my garden, I have plants that I remember certain people by, whether they were plants that someone gave me, or they were plants that were a prominent plant in their garden, or they introduced me to that plant. And it's not necessarily that I planted these plants in their memory or their honor, but it's just plants that when I see them, I remember them, and it just gives me a good feeling. So there's lots of, I sort of strayed a little bit from horticultural therapy, but there's lots of ways to practice horticultural therapy. There can be lots of settings, lots of different kinds of populations, but it's a goal-oriented process to create well-being in the garden.
That's interesting. I had no idea that anything like that existed. And where can people find that in their own community?
That may be difficult. There aren't that many horticultural therapists around. Certainly, it's an emerging profession, maybe. But I'm hoping that over time we will see these more in healthcare settings, and elder facilities, and mental health facilities. There's prisons, schools. There's lots of possible settings, but it's still getting out of the starting gates, I'd say.
Well, it's great that it's being, horticulture is being thought of in that way. That's really interesting. So in terms of recent research, is there anything that's been released lately looking into those connections? I would imagine that being in quarantine for people, and starting to think more about, solitary gardening is something that might be interesting to study.
I think, with our current situation, people feeling maybe a little bit more isolated, not being able to be connected with friends and family. I think there's a real role for gardening in the socialization process, especially since it's outdoors. And we can get people to maybe participate in a conversation around the garden. That would be great. Yeah, gardening there is a more broader body of research that's showing that horticultural therapy, or even just gardening, or even just looking at nature, does have some benefits. There's lots of research in Japan is a great hotbed right now of research. Korea, Scandinavian countries, but even in the U.S., there's still lots of research that's showing that connecting with nature lowers your stress, improves your mood, reduces anger, reduces anxiety. There's lots of different factors that are showing positive effects from gardening. I might just bring up a really interesting book. It's called The Nature Fix. And I'm sorry I don't have that prepared. I can't remember the author. But she talks about lots of different ways of connecting with nature and the benefits. And I just remember one of the studies that they showed was I believe it was a housing development in Chicago, where one side of the residents had a view of might have been an interstate or a road or something, and on the other side of this housing development, there was a view of trees. Wasn't a forest or anything, it was just a few trees. But when they compared crime levels between the residents on the two sides, they were vastly different. Crime levels were much lower on the side where people could view trees. So even just almost a casual interaction with gardens or nature can really have positive impacts on people.
That's really interesting. I'm going to keep asking John questions, but if you're listening in the audience, please feel free to submit your questions. And one of the questions that I have, because this has happened to me a number of times, is about failure in the garden. And, what happens? How do you deal with this from a mental health perspective when things don't grow? They don't, you get a freeze and that's it. The deer get to your plantings and it's just decimated. How do you turn that into a positive mental health experience?
Jessica, it sounds like you need some garden therapy. Well, failure is such a fatal word. Maybe we could call it setbacks. Yeah, there's always setbacks in gardening. And one thing that's, here's an interesting thing. So one of the horticultural therapy programs I do here at Bullington Gardens is for some high school students that have special needs. And we work with 4 high school groups. And in a typical year, they come to Bullington throughout the year. And the goal of that particular horticultural therapy exercise is to teach them basic job skills. So these students are going to be graduating from high school. And really the whole focus of the program there in high school is to teach them to be good workers so they can be independent. So part of that experience is they come to Bullington, they work in the grounds here. And sort of the big event that happens during that time is we have a garden competition between the 4 high schools, the students in the 4 high schools. So we've actually had an abbreviated program this year. Our students just came back in April. We were able to work with them, and where these students are usually planning the garden and coming up with a theme and growing seeds for these gardens, we just didn't have time to do that. So I gave them a theme this year, and I told them we were going to buy all the plants. So we did, and so the theme I gave the students was unity. So all 4 schools have to interpret this theme by creating a garden. One school chose they don't really. It's a red, white, and blue sort of national. We've been through a lot as a nation. Maybe we can come together. Sort of a hopeful aspect to this interpreting this theme. So they have red, white, and blue plants, and some of the white plants. I bought them some scaviolas, this white sort of low-growing plant. And 2 days ago, I came in and the scaviolas they planted were just decimated. Some animal had gone in there. It almost looked like someone had gone in there with a pair of scissors. And I haven't told the students yet this, but I bet their first thought is that one of their competitors, one of their competing schools did it, but it's not possible. But it was probably some rabbit that came in there and just decimated these plants. And so there's a failure situation or a setback situation that I'm going to present to them. But I guess the way I think about it is the setbacks always provide opportunities for rebounding, learning, trying to approach things a different way. And then when you do rebound from a setback, then that satisfaction is even greater, I think, once you can sort of navigate what it is that sets you back and overcoming that in some way.
I think it's like that with most things in life, actually. You look at your setbacks and then how you can overcome them.
It's a problem-solving situation.
Yeah. Well, if we don't have any audience questions yet, I think I will ask you one more question, John. One of the elements of the video that I loved and that really hit home for me was that gardening is an exercise of the 5 senses. You know, even as I think it was Erica who was planting the basil, kind of imagining, you know, like, oh my gosh, in a few months, is that going to be pesto on my pasta? And can you talk about sort of that connection as well and how important it is for us to engage the senses and how gardening does that?
I mean, what better activity can engage your 5 senses than gardening? Yeah, it is important. And, you know, there are some related therapies that focus on, you know, you can think of aromatherapy and, you know, there are therapies that focus on a single sense, but gardening pulls it all together. And yeah, you can, and one of the things that's really good with the therapeutic aspect of gardening is to try to focus on those senses. So, you know, we often go through life, sort of smelling, sort of looking, or sort of seeing, but not really focusing on those senses. And so what we can do with horticultural therapy or just the therapeutic use of gardening is redirecting our attention so that we do really focus on those senses, and they can be very beneficial. One interesting therapy that's sort of taken off recently is called forest bathing, and it originated out of Japan. I think forest bathing is a direct translation of the term they use, and might be a little bit confusing. There's no bathing involved, but it's a immersion of being in the forest and just immersing yourself in the forest. And it's really just sort of redirecting your concentration on the forest and all the aspects of the forest and the senses. So using your smell and touch. And it's really been, it's really growing. It's really proven to be quite beneficial for people sort of dislinking from those distractions in their life and having some very positive mental health benefits. So yes, using all the senses is definitely something that gardening can do and certainly is beneficial to all of us. You're muted, Jessica.
Apologies. Thank you, John, so much for joining us live, for contributing such a wonderful video. Bullington Gardens looks beautiful. We'll have to all come down someday on a field trip and check it out. Oh, we do have a question. What fertilizer do you recommend?
Well, that's I guess it depends on what we're planting, right? You know, you have approaches to using organic fertilizers or non-organic fertilizers. Certainly when we're using anything with children or sort of horticultural therapy setting, we're using sort of more organic type fertilizers. So it could be fish emulsion, it could be bone meal, it could be, it just depends on the kind of plant we're planting, what stage the plant is in. We're using more high phosphorus fertilizers when we're starting to plant things because that's good for root development. We're also using a little bit more higher phosphorus fertilizers later when we're trying to get flowering to occur. That's what phosphorus is good for too. Nitrogen is really good for that green growth, so that's good for the in-between time. So it's sort of a hard question to answer without knowing exactly what we're growing.
Yeah, that's understandable. There's a lot of variables, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you, John, so much for joining us live from Bullington Gardens, and for contributing a video and for all you do to help people find mental health and strengthen their mental health in the garden. It's great.
Thank you. I hope to see you folks at Bullington Gardens.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Rebecca?
Welcome back. Well, I feel inspired right now about the possibilities and the opportunities that are available outside of our doors, whether we have, a yard to work in, or we want to do something on our decks and on our porch that we can use. Those really wonderful. So to build on that, we developed this series because we know that people are maybe feeling down and a sense of loss and loneliness right now. But of course, mental health has been a concern for some people for more chronic issues and over time. So we wanted to bring in resources to share with you from wherever you are across the country so that you can connect with the right thing for you, whether it's an episodic or a long-term thing, or you just want to have resources for a friend or support person. So today we are fortunate to have Pam Jalette, I might have mispronounced your name, with us, and I'm just going to unmute you, Pam. Oh, you got yourself, and then I got you. There you go. You're free. And tell us a little bit about the services of NAMI as a resource, both in Western North Carolina and throughout the country.
Sure. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today and tell you about NAMI. It's something I'm very passionate about. NAMI stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we are the largest grassroots organization on mental illness in the country. We are dedicated to improving the lives of anyone living with mental health issue or concern, as well as the families of individuals living with a mental health issue. And we want to make sure that everyone who's affected by mental illness has a chance to live a full and productive life. In the past, it was almost like a death sentence to be diagnosed with a mental illness, a serious mental illness. But today, recovery is possible. There's no cure for mental illness, but recovery is possible. And lots of people live with mental illness and have full productive lives. And my son is an example of that. I always have to bring him up because he has a very serious mental illness, but together we have traveled that road. It's been a long road, but he is living independently and working part-time and doing really well. In fact, if you go to our website, namiwnc.org, you'll see that we have a great website that was designed and maintained by my son. So I'm very proud of him for doing that. So NAMI is a national organization, and there are affiliates all across the United States. And our programs, which include support groups for people who have mental illness and support groups for family members or caregivers of anyone with a mental illness. All of those programs, our classes are all signature-based, research-based, and they're consistent. NAMI trains all of the facilitators, and the facilitators are people who have a mental illness, are living with it, or family members, caregivers, and we're trained to present these programs So no matter where you are in, Alaska or Arkansas or North Carolina, the programs will be the same. So the ones that we have here in Western North Carolina include Connections Peer Support Group, which meets twice monthly. And of course, we've gone virtual like everybody else. And at first, it was a little rough. We had to train everyone how to do Zoom and unmute yourself and all of that. But it's going quite well. And we have a consistent group of peers who meet twice a month, usually about 15 in the group. And then we have a family support group, which meets twice a month also. And it too is very popular. I actually serve as executive director, so I'm in the office. We have an office in the Comprehensive Care Center on Biltmore Avenue in Asheville. And I'm there answering the phones, and I register everyone for the groups and, maintain all of the records. So we've been able to serve well over 200 people just since the beginning of the year. So our support groups are going really well. We also have a class called Family to Family, which is an 8-week class for family members or caregivers of anyone living with a mental illness. And that class is very popular. I am trained to teach that class, and I just finished one up about a month ago. And we already have another one scheduled to begin in June. And one thing that we're doing right now is we have an anxiety support group that meets twice a month. And this anxiety group is for anyone having difficulty managing their anxiety, especially during this pandemic and now the gas shortage. So that anxiety group also is very popular, and they have between 15, 17 people every time that they meet. So if you go to our website, NAMIWNC.org, you can learn about all these programs, and all you have to do is give me a call and I'll get you registered. And I have lots more I can say, but I'm not sure what our time period is.
That's great, Pam. I think that's perfect. Is there a phone number you want to leave people with? I heard you say phone call if people want to give you a call.
Sure. It's 828-505-7353.
Okay, and I will put that up on the screen. It's 828, excuse that other two, multitasking cannot be sometimes a good thing, 505-7353.
Right.
Thank you, Pam. And are resources for free if you access support groups and other resources through NAMI?
I'm sorry, my phone was ringing. What was that?
Is there a cost to accessing resources through NAMI?
No, all of our programs are free.
Great,
And
thank you.
you don't have to be a member. You can just call and register and we'll get you set up.
Wonderful. What a fantastic resource available throughout our country. Another resource that is available throughout the country is the Area Agency on Aging. That's a network of resources for people who are aging and includes health promotion and other resources. Bria, can you tell us a little bit about what people can find through an Area Agency on Aging? You are muted. I will unmute you. Oh. Didn't work. Okay, Bria, you're still muted and I wasn't able to unmute you. You'll have to unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
There we go. How about that? All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Jessica, John, I wish it wasn't raining so much here today because it got me with the urge to want to go outside. My name is Bria Kirkendall, and I'm actually the health program specialist for the Land of Sky Area Agency on Aging. And the Area Agency on Aging actually promotes the highest level of well-being in older adults and their families by partnering with other organizations to provide a comprehensive system of opportunities and services and protective services. AAAs are a leader and catalyst in helping older adults lead more independent, vibrant lives. And even though we're located in the Western North Carolina area, covering Buncombe, Madison, Transylvania, and Henderson County with land to sky, no matter where you're located, you really should reach out and see what your local area agency on aging has to offer, because triple A's are part of a national network, and it's established by the Older Americans Act, and we just all work to strengthen home and community care for older adults. And yeah, so thanks, Rebecca.
Perfect, perfect. And Jessica, I know that Jewish Family Services of Western North Carolina has a subsidiary, Healing Solutions Counseling. Tell us more about how that can benefit older adults and the population in general.
Sure. Well, we offer clinical, licensed clinical therapy mostly through telehealth right now. But it's an opportunity to meet with a licensed counselor for therapy and counseling, and really establish goals and objectives and sort of walk on that path to healing. It's a wonderful program, Healing Solutions Counseling. We are open to people of all faiths here at Jewish Family Services. Excuse me. And we do accept Medicare, along with a number of other insurances, Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Cigna, Aetna, a few others. And we also have some financial aid for people who need a little help with co-pays, or people who don't have insurance, who haven't yet reached Medicare age. So we're very proud of this program. It's grown significantly in the last year, which says to us that people are really craving the connection and are still turning to therapy, even though it's not in person and it looks a lot different from what we want it to look like. But it's been very effective.
Thank you so much to Jessica, to Pam, to John and Bria, and to each of you for joining us today for a topic about how we can explore new possibilities and access joy. I would be remiss not to let you know about AARP resources in your community, programs like this one, working with our partners to help our community members be more aware of what's available. And I hope you all get out there and enjoy some gardening to boost your spirit and explore new possibilities within and outside of yourself. We hope you also join us next week. We have a really fun session to cap off our 3-part series, and that is with the Bria Kirkendall, who you just saw. She's doing a session called Game On. There's quite a trend now around the gaming, and gaming, just like gardening, can be something that is experienced intergenerationally with family members. There are both digital virtual games, and there's also your classic board game that's come and evolved in many ways. So we hope that you'll join us. One way to stay tuned is by subscribing to the YouTube channel that you're watching right now, or clicking like on the Facebook page, and that way you'll get an instant notification. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye.